Hi and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be as much as possible what we read this past homeschool year and what we're going to aim for in the next homeschool year. So I will be honest, I will try to link down below the videos I have done in the past of the read alouds that we have done as a family, and I kind of want to do a disclaimer in here like I did last year. Insofar as the plan versus what we have actually done, it's a little bit different. It's actually drastically different. But I still make these videos because the heart of it is there's so many books out there and there's so many that you want to read, and sometimes it's just really hard to weed out where and why. But needless to say, there's so many out there. Some of these will probably be recognizable to many of you. And hopefully, like every year, some of you will find new friends. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to start with the books that we have read this year, and I'm going to try to keep it brief. Some of these I have already talked about in previous book reviews that I do pretty much on a month-to-month basis. Can't always get them filmed and uploaded for you. I beg your pardon. I'm sorry. That's not, intentional, and that I'm trying to make your life miserable. Is just life. And in this deck, I don't have all of the books that we have read. We have read as a family, listened to audio for Hardy Boys. We have as a family read Jason's Gold, which was part of a like a read aloud gift swap thing that I did with Creative Tea Time Mom and other ladies, and that is not in here. And there was a couple other books that we have done that are just not in this stack, whether they're packed away and I really don't want to deal with it, or we have moved on from them. Thimble Summer by Elizabeth Enright will be another one that I don't have. The copy I had was old and it was kind of torn in some pages and it was missing some pages, so that has been passed along. But that one was a very fun read. This is also not in the order in which we read. It's just in the order that I could find the books. So without further ado, let me also link down below my Goodreads. There's over 300 books at this point of ones that I have read, not just children's, but also adults. And hopefully you can find more information there to kind of help you. I typically talk about what I like about a book on Goodreads and what I could see potential issues being. However, I am human and I sometimes miss things that other people will point out. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. So take what I say with a grain of salt. I am not a detailed person in this. It's not my job. It's just a mom sharing with you. And with that 4+ minute introductions, let's get on with the list. So since we talked about Elizabeth Enright and Thimble Summer, I think I'm going to start out with this book. The other thing I want to mention with Elizabeth Enright is that I'm actually going to do another video shortly with kind of her as a spotlight. She was a very good children's author. She knew how to write for families. And I say that because my 6-year-old enjoys it as much as my 12-year-old. Even my almost 4-year-old will still walk around quoting The Melendi Children, which is one of our favorites. So I really want to do a highlight of her, but one of the books that we read this year was Gone Away Lake by Elizabeth Enright. This was actually a childhood favorite, but it actually isn't the first one that's my favorite. It's the second one that's going to be coming up here shortly. The second one is your Chip and Johanna Gaines for Kids book. That's all I can say. Fixer-upper in its child viewpoint. But Gone Away Lake is the story of two cousins, Portia and I can never remember, Foster, who basically come together during the summer, and the summer they ended up finding this swamp house, these houses that have been basically abandoned for years. It used to be like this retreat. However, an eccentric old man and his sister still live there, and Portia, Foster, and Portia's brother, no, I'm sorry, Julian is a cousin. Foster is the little brother. They get to explore and have adventures and learn more about the time period, that they're living in, as well as the time period from these eccentric old folks. Very fun book. I don't think my kids really got into it at first, but by the end, they loved it. Along with as well as Enright and this book this video that I'm going to be making for you, we're going to talk a little bit more about the Moffats in that one. But this one is by Eleanor Estes. If you like Penderwicks, you will like the Moffats. I think it has more of a whimsical time period for children. There's some things that we definitely could not do today, but I think it's still innocence and beauty and goodness and truth and all of that type of thing that Sarah Mackenzie from the Read Aloud Revival really pushes for choosing read alouds. This one has some scrapes that the kids get in. They have some family strengths that you just want to hold on to, and it has, you know, your bullies in it, so to speak, but not so intense, if that makes sense. Again, I'm really going to go into more depth through this of these series in this other video that's going to be coming. So I'm trying to figure out what exactly I want to share. If you hear sounds in the background, my son is charging through the house, blowing things up. I'm not sure what it is, but that's probably what you're hearing in the background. And there's his horse galloping away. So that's another one that we did and was really enjoyable, and the kids, again, started out meh, but by the end of it was loving it. One of the things I do is I try to do a little bit more one-on-one with my children in reading. My daughter and I are reading some books. My eldest daughter and I are reading some books. She's almost 13. And my 6-year-old daughter and I read some books. And then I kind of just lump my boys together because they are typically about the same interests. They're two peas in a pod, so it's easy to kind of do that. One of the books that we did this year was The Great Brain by John Fitzgerald. It has been a timeless classic for boys, but I am going to say that I really do think that this will be one of those books that very conservative Christian parents might have some issues with. The boy in here, John, I'm trying to figure out his brother. Tom? It is Tom. Okay, Tom, John's brother, since this is loosely based on his own experiences, Tom has a great brain, okay? And he kind of wields it in a way that benefits him. And so it's highlighted because this is kind of how boys work, boys think kind of thing. And John tends to be the little one that's kind of caught up in it. And I think that's why my boys really liked it. Typically though, it's kind of the reverse. My younger boy has the brain and wields it to the destruction of both of the younger one and the older one. And so I think it was really neat to just see it from this perspective. There is some Mormons in here that are kind of treated disdainfully, but at the same time, they're also revered, for lack of a better word, for their financial skills. So we have many more in these series and we still read it. But again, I just want you to say, like, at one point, Tom is going to teach this Greek boy how to put up his fists and fight, and he figures out a way to get paid for that. At one point, they're showcasing certain things and they're collecting money for this. Anyway, Tom just has for him, it's about financial gain or what he can gain from it. And so sometimes they're not necessarily ethically good, but the dad and the mom in the picture, insofar as they know, tend to balance him out, but you still get the adventures that boys think of. And so far, I haven't had mimicking that I need to undo because of reading that book. All right, another read aloud that we did was Carry On Mr. Bowditch. If you take nothing else from this video and you haven't read this book, just pick this book up. This was so good. I had children from, I think by the time we were reading it, 5 all the way to 14, really, really loving it. It is a difficult read in the sense that Nathaniel Bowditch pretty much loses all of his dear ones in his life. And so that can be a hard topic, but while there were some tears in reading it, Nathaniel's tenacity for going after what he really wanted in life was very inspiring. And this book was really well written in the sense that you're getting a good historic education, but you're also getting it from the standpoint of this young man growing into, or this boy growing into a young man through all the obstacles he faced. So it was really, really good, really well done. It was a 5-star read, and it's one that I will always keep on my shelves because I will probably pick it up time and time again. For our history read, I have 2 here to show you, and I'm not gonna go too much into these because that video will be coming out shortly too. I have a lot of videos that I need to get filmed. But I have Cheng Li, who is a part of the Silk Road. All of us really enjoyed this ancient China viewpoint of a caravan boy. And you have kind of a little bratty princess in here that he's in charge of. He kind of starts low on the totem pole, and he's working his way through. He's determined to figure out who his father is. And there is obstacle he faces. There is a companion that he has to figure out if he's going to take the easy route with this companion and pretty much lose a good name, or if he's going to pretty much lose his life with this companion. So really good topics discussed in the story. A lot of the harsh realities faced within the Silk Road was addressed in here, and we really, really enjoyed it. I had to look last night as to the timeline of this because I know some people look for things like this, and this is like AD 4 to 500-ish. So if that's something that you need. We also did Bronze Bow by Elizabeth George Spear, who is probably one of my top favorite authors of all times. This one tells the story of Daniel, who is about the time of Christ, and he is waiting for the Messiah to come and wipe out the Romans. He has a vendetta against them. He has a sister who is demon possessed, and I really liked how Elizabeth George Spear approached this. And he starts out with these kind of outlaws, and you're getting an idea of what Daniel is facing in trying to work with the outlaws and some of the practices they do. And he's starting to see a slow change and progression as to what really he wants to do insofar as restoring his heritage and his nation. It was so beautifully done. Definitely some hard moments, some really great discussions going on with this with the children. Really recommend that. I'm going to try not to keep, too much talking about that. One that we finished today in our homeschool was Jim Elliot. This is a biography read that we have been doing. I'm trying to remember the last one we did. I think it was Eric Liddell. And because I don't think we've been doing Jim Elliot this whole year. I think it was Eric Liddell. And I don't have that book. As soon as I'm done with these, I tried to pass them along so that others could enjoy them because we were moving across country, couldn't take everything with me. Eric Liddell was really good. I think the copy I had was also Heroes of the Faith. But I know that people really like the Christian Heroes Then and Now series. I kind of go back and forth with which ones I like. There's some problems I struggle with on that particular publisher, Christian Heroes Then and Now. But there's also something that I have with this. It's just original sources really, really help with that. So I will say that Jim Elliot, Heroes of the Faith, with what I know from Elizabeth Elliot's writing, from other sources, this aligned really well. This was not our favorite read to begin the year, but about the time you really get Jim Elliot's character and understand that, and then you see him go into Ecuador to be a missionary. Suddenly we were then more invested, but he was kind of, I don't really want to say self-righteous, because when he was very devoted and very dedicated, and sometimes it came across as very self-righteous. And I think it was really hard for the kids to kind of appreciate how this made who he was. And what I really liked at the end of this book is that it did address some of these questions that we were facing as we were reading this. Even I was having some difficulties with that. Anyway, we really did like this one. I can recommend this. And if I can remember, I will try to create a blog post with all of these books linked in it so that it's easy for you just to pull up. And if you're in a library or a bookstore or something and you just want to pull it up, it'll be easy to do that. So I think that's what I will work on doing. Those just tend to take a while, so bear with me. On the way down to Indiana, think about it, we're traveling 12 to 14 hours a day driving. We did a lot of audiobooks. One of them was Echo by Ryan. It's that's why I don't even try, because I know what it's supposed to sound like. I just don't get it out very well. This has a 3-person storytelling, but at the beginning you have more of a fantasy element, and then it brings in really enriching like historical context. And the fantasy element of it is that you have this harmonica, and you have 3 princesses that were supposed to be disposed of. Well, the midwife takes them to her sister, who is a witch. This is where this might be a little weird for some people, but the sister then basically turns them into her slaves. And then the king dies, and the midwife goes to get the 3 princesses, and the witch is angry, and she like puts this curse on them. And then this boy finds out about their curse and how this harmonica plays, and then it plays a part in the rest of the story, but you don't really get a whole lot of that other than a harmonica has a theme throughout the other 3 stories. You have Friedrich, I think his name is in Germany, Mike in Pennsylvania, and Ivy in California. Friedrich has a German perspective on World War II. Mike has a New York perspective on World War II, being an orphan during this unsettling time. And then Ivy, who is Mexican in California, goes and takes care of a Japanese house. So you're getting all of these different perspectives of World War II in a really good story. And I thought that was well done. So this one, it's really thick, but it's very worthwhile. It's an easy read. And we had the audiobook, which had music in the background, and it was beautiful. So I really recommend that. But this was definitely a favorite of everybody's. Hands down, that's all they wanted, was more and more of that. Recently, we just finished The Mark of Zorro by Johnston Mcculley. Okay, so it originally was a newspaper serial novel, and then it became a television series, which then sparked a desire for more and more, and he ended up writing 40 Zorro novels in 1936. I don't remember. Nope, 1919. So 1920s. And let's try to keep this. Honestly, if you're trying to get into classics, I think this one would be the best. The chapters are 4 pages. And there are heightened. You're always kind of left with a little cliffhanger, because remember, this was a newspaper story, so you wanted the next installment. And it was really well done. It's kind of your Robin Hood of the California desert area. I mean, you have San Diego talked about, Los Angeles talked about, and the middle ground in between. So, which I think was Pasadena. Anyway, my home area-ish, insofar as it was like 2.5 hours away. So, we really liked this. Sometimes I would read 2 or 3 chapters in a sitting because it was more and more and more. So if you're trying to get into classics, this might be a good one. My boys and my girls liked it. I will say, anytime we had the mushiness of the Señorita Lalita, there was a little eye rolling on. And at some point, I'm like, honey, read. Like, you can get through this. I can't get through this without gagging and making mush sounds. We just don't go for all that. Another thick chunka munka that we read and really enjoyed was The Invention of Hugo Cabret by Brian Selznick. This is thick because this has some beautiful illustrations within it. And the illustrations basically tell their own stories within the book, if I can get some more. And this author is known more for that. The Invention of Hugo Cabret is a little steampunk, and it takes place in, I was trying to think, the train station. Where's the train station? I know where the train station is. Paris. It takes place in a train station in Paris. This boy has lost his father in an accident fire in a museum. He was trying to recreate this mechanical piece, and he goes and lives with his uncle. Well, his uncle died, but he still doesn't want anybody knowing that he's there, so he just works the clocks at the train station under the scenes. And he's kind of a thief. He ends up stealing toys from this toy maker to kind of see how they're working together and make mechanisms, and he's trying to recreate this mechanical man. And what involves is a lot of interesting adventure stories that the kids are just trying to piece together. Again, it's very steampunk. It's very interesting in the sense that you get a lot of like STEM type of illustrations and explanations. You get a lot of early film history, and it really just kind of grew in our hearts, and we really liked like some of these. I forgot, like sometimes you get what little fuzzy pictures. It's so fascinating. So I really recommend this. I think this was another 5-star read, and I don't remember anything objectionable in that. Another one that I read aloud to my boys was Recollections Creek by Fred Gibbons. You might recognize the author of Old Yeller. He is the author of Old Yeller, I mean. And this one is kind of a boyhood, childhood tale. And it's about the one summer he had with a cousin that ended up getting him in so much mischief. So, on that note, there is a lot of weird stories in here, but there is a lot of laughter. At some point, my husband was picking up the book and reading it to the boys because it was pretty funny and he was getting in it. It's a guy humor thing, okay? It's definitely a more backwoods Three Stooges kind of thing. At some point, like, one of the uncles chops off 3 of his toes, and they have to bury. In describing it, it would sound disgusting and like, oh my gosh, why did you read this? But like I said, it has that Three Stooges humor for your backwoods. Definitely a boy love type of thing. Grandpa is after these turkey vultures that he's just apt to get in the graveyard. There's a courting going on. Jay is kind of very mischievous. He's not kind of, he is. He's kind of out for himself, spoiled child type of thing. He gets a guy being his sister's suitor in some cactus. They ended up having, that was actually a beautiful thing. There's like a man in here who's very slow, methodical, and kind of reminds me of Judd from Oklahoma. just not as evil. But that kind of person, and they get him to participate in this horse race with his bull because it's said on the sign like any four-legged creature. So it's kind of ironic, not ironic, but it's kind of silly. And again, boys really enjoyed it. I was rolling my eyes through a lot of it, but the boys really loved it. I think there is some older language in there, like jackass and things like that, that you've also found in Old Yeller. But whatever. I was talking about what I was reading with my 6-year-old, and we had B is for Betsy. That was one that we read and she really enjoyed. I actually don't have the book that I read with her. This is the second one in the series. This is Heaven to Betsy and Betsy in Spite of Herself. The first one was a 4-novel in one thing that we had from the library. It was Betsy Tacy and Tib, Betsy Tacy go over the hill, or Betsy goes over the hill, and Betsy Tacy goes downtown. And this one, Heavens to Betsy, well, let me talk about that first one. I'm just having this to hold up and show with you. My 6-year-old loved that book so much, and she wanted the whole series. It's very, very sweet and gentle. It's kind of an Anne of Green Gables story that starts young with your perfect family. You have some sibling rivalry done in a very loving way, for lack of a better word. It's just beautiful. I don't know how else to describe it. Very Anne-like in that sense. And then you have more characters kind of come in and depart. It's like you're seeing this whole life of Betsy and Maud Hart Lovelace. Carried it on up to all the way to the last one is Betsy's Wedding, which my 6-year-old is so excited about. We started the second one, which is Heaven to Betsy and Betsy in Spite of Herself. However, this is when Betsy is more of a tween teen, and I could see that the interest wasn't there. So we're going to set this aside for now, but this was another series she really, really loved and enjoyed. Okay, so that's a simple, basic summary of all the books that we did read this past homeschool year, 2019-2020. I shared the 2 books that we're wrapping up, but I also have like a whole homeschool stack of books that we're wrapping up. But these 2 I'll share because they're more of the lighthearted reads. This one is Goodbye, Mr. Chips. This is one that I'm reading to my boys right now at bedtime. By the way, we did read Gray Fox by Michael Phillips to my boys. We all loved it. It was phenomenal. My 6-year-old, no, I'm sorry, he's 8 years old. My 8-year-old as well as my 11-year-old really liked it. My 11-year-old has since then picked it up on his own because he wants to reread it. Really, really good book. But then we picked up Goodbye, Mr. Chips by James Hilton. It is a very popular book insofar as classics, and I thought it would be a little bit more lower in levels than it is. It's not a bad story. I just don't think it has our attention. It's kind of a thought reflective work about the school teacher throughout his life, and I'll be honest, I think they're ready for another book right now, but I'm going to finish it because we're halfway through, and it's a short book. But I probably wouldn't have chosen that for my books, or for my boys' hindsight, if I had more knowledge about it. I remember briefly reading it or seeing the movie or something and really liking it, and I thought we would, but I think this is more of a reflective. And then the other book that we're finishing up that will be part of the Elizabeth Enright video that I hinted about. This one is No Children, No Pets by Marian Holland, and it started out with all the other books not sure we really like it. However, as we've gotten further along, the kids have been saying, hey, this is like, and so now we're getting a little bit more interested into it. So those are the 2 that we're currently reading. So what is coming up? Well, Okay. Let's kind of pause this. Okay, so I made this video and I pulled out these books that we're going to read. And then as I was reflecting on our homeschool year and trying to get stuff ready, I was like, wait a minute, I'm trying to simplify. Why did I do this? I was not going to make these kind of lists this year. I was going to just take things as I go and as we needed. But I'm going to leave this in because these are the books that my children did choose after I suggested they do that. And so I'm going to try to make an effort to make sure that it does get into our homeschool year. I asked my children, I have 5 of them in case you don't know. I asked my children today to go behind me and on this shelf right here, choose the books that they wanted to read during this homeschool year. There's plenty of books on there we want to read. The almost 4-year-old's one will be very interesting, what he chose, but we'll get to that. These are the ones that the children chose, and we'll start with the almost 4-year-old. He chose this book, and I think he chose it because of its size. It's easy to pull. He loved it. This is The Light That Failed by Rudyard Kipling. That's all I know about this. I just saw the author, and I picked it up, and that's all I can tell you. 6-year-old, who is a young girl, chose Black Beauty, and so we are going to do Black Beauty. This is a beautiful edition from Barnes & Noble. My 8-year-old boy, after seeing the movie a couple weeks ago, chose The Railway Children. Very excited to read that with them. That's one of my favorites. My 11-year-old son chose The Magician's Nephew, so we'll start our Chronicles of Narnia, which may mean that I put this as our last read so we can just continue on with the series. And then my 12-year-old daughter chose The Secret Garden, which is also a Barnes & Noble beautiful edition, because she's heard me quote it a lot recently. She wanted to read it. Love that girl. So that's going to be the books that we're going to try to attempt to read this year. And if you see, there's a lot of classics in here. That is okay by me. It's what I have out, and we're not rating them, so I'm kind of glad that we're kind of moving in that way. So if you have anything to suggest, go ahead and leave it down in the comments below. We'd love to hear about those. And if you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, because that really helps me in making content. And if you have read any of these books and have an opinion, I encourage you and invite you to share them down below. I will see you in my next video. Adios.